Was Jesus the only Son of God? Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Walsh. I'm a scholar of New Testament and early Christianity and part of the Bart Ehrman team. And the quick answer to that question, was Jesus the only Son of God, is actually no. In the ancient Mediterranean world, so here I'm thinking about both the Greco-Roman world as well as within Judaism, there were actually multiple people who either claimed that kind of exalted status, or people sort of appended or offered that kind of exalted status to someone or associated them with it. So let me give you some examples. Right off the bat, you might think about someone like a Roman emperor. So, for example, Augustus claimed that he was descended from Venus. That's why you sometimes see statues of him, like the Prima Porta, with a little Cupid holding on to the hem of his garments. And he usually put this on something like his breastplate. So he would be the son of a god in that case. Another example, Alexander the Great. We have birth narratives for him, so part of his biographical tradition, that claimed that his mother was actually tricked by a god who disguised himself as her husband and visited her in her bedchamber to conceive Alexander. So that explains why he was so extraordinary. And that is the theme here. Usually, the person who is being associated with this kind of status has some kind of seemingly almost supernatural or superhuman ability. So, people like really great doctors or even really great athletes, this is the kind of moniker that they might actually receive. Now, within Judaism, I can give you a few examples. Let me try two or three. So one is a man named Honi, and we know about Honi from some later sources, but also from Josephus, the Jewish historian, in his Antiquities around chapter 14. He talks about Honi the Circle Drawer. And Honi's claim to fame, his sort of supernatural ability, was that he could make rain come by praying to God. And so the fact that he was able to get God to listen to him when he's requesting rain was considered a superhuman trait. So he would draw a circle around himself and stay in that spot and ask God to bring rain, and would stay there until it comes. Now you can imagine in times of, drought or famine, he actually gets a pretty sizable following because he is able to both put on this display but also show this kind of favor. Eventually, he's actually stoned to death outside of Jerusalem on Passover. So some interesting parallels there with the eventual Jesus narrative, and Honi lived about 100 years before Jesus. Now, another example about 15 years after Jesus' time is a man named Theudas. Now, Theudas claimed that he would be able to go down to the Jordan River and part it like the Red Sea, the way that Moses had. So he actually also brings himself together a following. He was also known as something of a teacher and wonder worker, and he marches down to the Jordan to part it like the Red Sea. But he's actually decapitated by the Romans once he gets there, and they also slaughter his followers. And I believe his head was brought to either Jerusalem or Rome. And so in each case, you had somebody who had a certain following, known as a teacher and a wonder worker, and probably had something of a bit of an apocalyptic outlook. And so the other figure, if I could just throw in here, that you might be familiar with, is John the Baptist. And we know from something like the Gospel of Mark that even at the time of that gospel being written, there's a moment when they're questioning the disciples who Jesus actually is. And I think Peter suggests, aren't you the resurrected John the Baptist or Elijah, or, brought back to life? So it just shows you what kind of status John the Baptist actually had. And there's a case of someone we know had an apocalyptic outlook. If you want to know more about these figures and about this particular moment in time and about this subject, I'm actually going to be giving a talk this coming Friday, March 21st at 2 o'clock Eastern on Was Jesus an Apocalyptic Prophet? We'll be talking more about all of these figures and about the landscape of first century Judea and what made it possible to have figures like this populate that landscape and agitate against Rome. Again, that's this coming Friday, March 21st at 2 o'clock Eastern. You can go to bartehrman.com/BSA learning to sign up. There you can actually sign up for a 14-day free trial. And even if you're seeing this after my talk, it should be posted there, along with a number of other talks from other scholars, as well as courses. We have discussion boards and other ways that you can explore your interests. So please go to bartehrman.com BSA Learning, and I hope to see you at my upcoming talk. Thank you. If you want to sorry.